Well, good afternoon, church. As we've come to the end of another week, a work week, we've watched news stories of Isaias just slamming the eastern seaboard and moving fast. And we're grateful that though it hit us hard, we just had to take some shelter and get out of the way and didn't have the massive flooding that we've had from former hurricanes here in North Carolina. Well, as we think about taking shelter, that's going to be the second in our series of survival. Last week, we looked at food is necessary to survive. Well, this week, we'll look at survival. We'll continue following the children of Israel in their wandering in the wilderness. And this time in Exodus 33, we find a reference to the children of Israel camping in tents. And then Moses goes outside the camp of the people of Israel, and he has a tent set up in order to meet God. The tent of meeting, or later on the more elaborate tabernacle, kind of like poles and curtains, the Ark of the Covenant, where the people would go in and God would speak, especially through Moses or through other servants or the priest, eventually moving on to the story of the temple later on in Israel's history. So this week we'll talk about sheltering and going into the tent with God to have a fellowship, to have almost like a friendly conversation. So we're going to read from 33 in Exodus, beginning with the 7th verse. Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp. He called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each of them at the entrance of their tents, and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow down, all of them, at the entrance of their tent. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. Then he would return to the camp, but his young assistant Joshua, son of Nun, would not leave the tent. Well, I hope you'll join us this coming Sunday as we continue in the series on Survive. We'll also be listening to one of America's favorite Bible teachers, Dr. David Jeremiah, as he talks about the history of God sheltering his people. Perhaps you need to turn to the Lord in a difficult time in your life. Do you need to shelter with God?